In this video, let's look at how to use the debug mode in Eclipse. One of the first things that you can do to kick off debug mode is put something called a breakpoint. So the first thing that you need to do in Eclipse, if you want to use a debug mode, is to put something called a breakpoint. So breakpoint means the place where the code needs to stop when you are running a program. So let's say I want my code to stop here. All that I need to do is actually right click on the line and say toggle breakpoint. So now it would insert a breakpoint there, or I can actually double click on there. So you can either double click there and it would insert you a breakpoint, or you can say toggle breakpoint. So this is how you would insert a breakpoint. What happens is when I do a debug, the code would come to this line and stop. Let me also show the line numbers. So I'm doing a right click and show line numbers. If you see there's a breakpoint, now next there's a small blue circle right next to line 10. This is called a breakpoint. So inserting a breakpoint is very simple. You just do a right click and toggle breakpoint, or you can double click on it and a breakpoint would be inserted. The important thing about this breakpoint is whenever code gets to line 10, the execution stops if you are in debug mode. So let's now activate debug mode and see what happens. The way you can run a program in debug mode is you do a right click and do a run as, or actually debug as Java application. So it's right click, debug as Java application. Just do a right click, debug as Java application, and now Eclipse asks you to confirm a perspective switch. Eclipse thinks that it's better to do a debug in a debug perspective rather than the Java perspective which we were in earlier. So now Eclipse is asking me to switch to debug perspective, and I think debug is the right perspective to be in when I'm doing a debug, so I would go ahead and click yes. So now I've clicked yes. You would see that the entire views which are appearing has completely changed. Now like if you see, the code execution is stopping at this particular line. So the code execution now stops at line number 10, and now I can see what are the different variables which are present. So if I just go ahead and highlight marks in the variables, you can see this view called variables. If you don't see this view in your by default, what you can do is do a click show view and click variables, or you can, so it's Windows show view variables if you don't see directly. The same thing applies to all other views. If you go to a debug perspective, then you should see all this stuff by default. So the way you can activate debug perspective if the Eclipse didn't take you by default to there is this. Just go to the open perspective and you have a perspective called debug in here. So this is how you would activate a debug perspective. In debug perspective, you should see the views variables, breakpoints. These are the two important things that are important in a debug perspective. So what you can actually now look at is, I can see the variable values. So I can see all the variable. There is one local variable in this particular thing called marks. So you'd see that the variable marks is present in here. Even the arguments, which is a parameter which is passed to this, we didn't pass any arguments here, so that is empty. Marks has values 1, 2 and 3. So these are the important things. The other thing is you can change the value for marks also. So I can click change value and change the value of first mark from 1 to 123. If I want to, I can change the value as well. So this is allowed in your debug perspective. In the debug perspective, in between, you can change what value is being used for that particular program. Now we are at this particular point, line 11, and the code is now invoking a method called print all marks. What I want to do is actually go inside that method and also debug and go through that particular thing. If you see the run menu, there are a few options called resume, terminate, step into and step over. The important options that we are looking at to now is step into and step over. Step into actually goes inside the function. So if I press F5 at this particular line, it would go inside print all marks and execute the code inside print all marks. If I press F6 here, it would execute the entire print all marks, and it would go to the next line, which is line number 11. So I'll try F5 here. F5 is uh, step into. So now I'm trying to do a step into. You can either press F5 or you can go to run menu and click step into. If you look at it right now, the code goes inside the print all marks method, and you'd see that the variable tab changes to show the variables which are now active. So the variables which are now active are marks, which is the same array that we looked at earlier, and count. Count is a new variable which is added in here. So now you'd see that count is 0. If I want to change the value of count, I can do that as we did earlier. So I can say change value, and I can say 10. So that is allowed. The other thing you can do is actually, if you hover over the variable, Eclipse would show you a small kind of a pop-up which shows you the values. So if I want to look at the value of count, I can do this as well. So I can just hover over the count variable and it would show the value in the count. We have changed it to 10, so it shows a value 10 now. Now if I press F5 again, if you see, the code goes inside the loop. So from line number 15, the execution shifted to line number 17, and you would see that there is a new variable inside the variables, because now the mark variable is active. So you can see the value inside the mark variable, which is 123. So that's basically the first value in the marks, and you'd see all the variables and the marks in present in here. So that's how you can see the variable values. As part of the debug mode, there is something called a watch window. We'll look at what is watch window next. So if you debug, if you right click a variable and go and say right click and say watch. So I'm right clicking a variable and I'm saying watch. I'm selecting watch from this particular thing, and if you look at it now, expressions view comes in. Here I can actually put expressions in. So I can say mark star 5 and it would store the value of mark star 5. This is where you can add your own expression. So in the variables view, you can see only the variables that are present in here. If you want to try some if you want to use any utility function, or if you want to use expression, then you can go to the watch window. It's called expressions, and you can add new expressions in here. So here I can do something like marks dot toString. ToString is a function, so now it shows the value of marks dot toString. So you can invoke a function on a particular object. You can also pass the object as a function, object as a parameter to a utility function. You can do anything of that kind in the expressions part, and this would give you the value, and you will be able to easily find out if there is some problem with your code. So this is called watch, and all the watches appear in a view called expressions. The way you would enable expressions if you don't see the view is go to show view, and you would see a view called expressions. You don't see here, go to other, and you'd be able to see the view expressions. So what we have looked at until now is how you can debug a Java program. If I press F5 now, it would go back. Because I pressed F5, it's now actually trying to go into the println method. Like the place where we pressed F5 was here, and the method which was being executed is println. So if I pressed F5 there, it goes into println method. Unfortunately, the code for println is not here, so it actually doesn't show what is happening behind the screen. What I would do is do a run, and I say a resume. It continues execution and completes the execution of that particular program, and in the console you would see the output. So the next, the option which we looked at is run resume. Resume helps to continue execution from where we are. So if you have found out what bug you are looking for, and you're not interested in what happens in the rest of the program, all that you need to do is do run resume, and it would go through the rest of the program and execute it and finally show you the output. If one thing you need to remember is, even after you do a resume, if there is a breakpoint present, it would stop at that particular breakpoint. So this is debug mode. This is how you use it in Eclipse. Play around with the debug mode, because debug mode is a very, very important feature in Eclipse, and it is very useful when you are trying to solve a bug. This video is part of a series of videos discussing various features in Eclipse, different shortcuts, and also tips to improve your productivity. If you like this video, show it by clicking like or commenting or sharing this video. We are creating more videos on varied range of topics as we speak. Subscribe to stay updated. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.